Alright, this is Anatomy and Physiology. This is Biology 2214, Section 21 from Ozarka College. My name is Bruce Deitchie, and we will start our Chapter 6 study this morning. I have the PowerPoints pulled up here, and I will lecture from those. If you'd like, I recommend that you either print the PowerPoints off or get a split screen so that you can see me and the PowerPoints. I'm not going to do anything except sit here and talk to you and kind of read the PowerPoints and comment on them as I would see something that I would think that the students would need to know. So I recommend that you do have PowerPoints copied, and I will have recommended that in class to you first of the week. All right. This is on the integument. I'll give you some preliminary information on this. The skin is the largest organ of the body. It's composed mostly of epithelial cells. It functions as a protective barrier, keeping bacteria and outside fluids out, keeps the body fluids in. It maintains melanin, a pigment here within the skin, within the integument here, absorbs UV light. It is a very sensory surface. We have nerve endings there, and they help us to interpret our environment. The skin itself stretches. It accommodates body movement. It's very flexible. It allows adequate movement, quick movement. It grows. The skin also controls our internal temperature. And it does this via primarily the blood vessels of the skin will contract when they're cold, and they'll dilate when the temperature is too high. Also, I want to mention to you that just as a general science bit of information, there is evaporation taking place from our skin. There's a little moisture on our skin, and there usually is moisture. You say, well, my skin's pretty dry, yeah. But whatever is moist there is going to evaporate. Evaporation is a cooling process. That's the way our air conditioners and so on work. So we need to keep some of these general science type items in mind as we study our organ systems. All right, two or more kinds of tissues that's grouped together and performing specialized functions will constitute an organ. So an organ is a group of specialized tissues. A tissue is a group of specialized cells. A cell is the basic unit of life. All right, the skin and its various structures make up the integumentary system. It's composed of several tissue types. Epithelium is one of those. I mentioned before that it helps to maintain homeostasis. It is a protective covering. It retards water loss. It assists there in too much evaporation. It helps to regulate body temperature. It houses sensory organs, contains immune system cells, synthesizes chemicals, excretes small amounts of waste. We have three primary layers to the skin. The epidermis, being the outer layer, is composed of stratified squamous epithelium. We have the dermis, which is the inner layer. It contains collagenous and elastic fibers. In the subcutaneous layer or sub-Q layer, also known as the hypodermis, below the dermis, it is areolar. It's composed of areolar and adipose connective tissue. Adipose is connective tissue. What is adipose? Adipose is fat. Real good illustrations that we have here. You can see the three primary layers: the epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutaneous layer there on the left. You can get into the detail of this. This is an illustration on the left, photomicrograph on the right. You can see many of the same features. This is a good listing. Yes, you will be required to know this, especially in lab. We'll cover this, and you will need to know the detail. A couple things I want to point out to you here. If you'll start down at the very bottom of that slide, of that illustration, I should say, of the skin there, look at the yellow, little bubbly things. Those represent adipose, and that is for cushioning. Look at what we find enmeshed in that: circulatory features, and all of this fat, if you will, this adipose, is right above the muscle layer, and typically this will be skeletal muscle, and you have these circulatory features embedded there. This adipose acts as a cushioning, so keep that in mind. You can see there, kind of in the center of that slide, there's kind of a purplish feature that would hold the hair in place, that being the hair follicle. You can see that it's separated from the hair shaft itself. You can see that there is a muscle called the erector pili muscle that is attached. I want to make that clear, that long pink feature through there is attached, and it is a muscle. A lot of other features there. You can see the sebaceous glands. You can see the vastness of the circulatory system. You can see sweat glands embedded there, Pacinian corpuscles. You can see Meisinger's corpuscle. So all of those are very important to our well-being. So let's talk about the epidermis. Typically it will lack blood vessels, or lack a lot of them. It is keratinized. Where do we find it the thickest? On our palms and our soles. S-O-L-E. We have melanocytes there that provide melanin. This does rest on a basement membrane. It is stratified squamous epithelium type of cells. You can see there on the right that you have 5 layers, and it lists the layers from top to the bottom. Stratum corneum, these are dead keratinized cells. These are the ones that will slough off as we go about our business. They'll slough off in our clothes. They'll slough off on products that have friction, even like our hands and our feet. So these are dead keratinized cells. Then you have the stratum lucidium. This is only on thick skin. We find this on our palms and the soles of our feet. And if it's lucid, we can see through it, so to speak. The stratum granulosum, it has granular features to it. Stratum spinosum and the stratum basale. And the stratum basale is very mitotic. This is where cell replication is going to be very, very active. Talk about the melanocytes located in the stratum basale. These produce the dark pigment melanin. Melanocytes, describing this type of cell, melano. Melanin gives the skin its color, and it also absorbs UV light. So fair-skinned people and dark-skinned people. We've got some controversy that we could, not controversy, but some comments that we could make about light and dark skin and those that's in between. Typically those that evolutionarily have been exposed to the sun longer and more intense will be found around the equatorial areas of the earth, and they will be obviously dark-skinned people. Fairer and lighter-skinned people will be found more northward and well as more southward. All right, heredity and our environment determine the skin color. There are genetic factors. It has to do with varying amounts of melanin, varying size of the melanin granules. Makes a point here to tell you that albinos lack melanin, the pigment melanin. Environmental factors, I've mentioned sunlight. You could mention X-rays, UV light from sun lamps. There's physiological factors. Dilation here of the dermal blood vessels. You get mad, upset, your face gets red, you get red around your neck area. So that is an illustration of that. Constriction of dermal blood vessels, you get more pale. Sometimes there's an accumulation of keratin, and sometimes we will develop jaundice. The dermis is about 1 to 2 millimeters thick. Look on your meter stick and see how thick that is. Kind of like the piece of cardboard perhaps on the back of one of your legal pads. A little thicker than that would be 1 millimeter. It contains dermal papillae. This helps to bind, if you will. It produces a greater surface area for attachment to the epidermis. Greater surface area will hold the dermis and the epidermis together, as it says there. Dense, irregular. It is a dense, irregular connective tissue. There are some muscle cells here. There's nerve cell processes. There's specialized sensory receptors. We have blood vessels, hair follicles, and glands. There's 2 layers to the dermis. There's a papillary layer that is areolar. In other words, the cells here will be spaced apart. They'll typically be larger cells. There's some space between them. This is a very thin layer, and we typically describe it as superficial, and this is where we will find these dermal papillae in this location. All right, we have the reticular layer, and this is a thicker area. There's a lot of features in this area that we'll comment on in a few minutes. It has a lot of dense, irregular connective tissue. That's where you'll find what I'd mentioned a while ago. And it encompasses most of the dermis. Some accessory structures of the skin. These originate from the epidermis, and they will be features like your nails, hair follicles, skin glands. Talk about the nails here. This is an excellent illustration of the nails. There's 3 parts to the nail. You have nail plate, the nail bed, and the luna. All of those are illustrated very easily there. And keep in mind, these are protective coverings. Talk about hair follicles. Hair follicles are epidermal cells coming from the epidermis. They form a tube-like depression down in the dermis. There are 3 parts. You have the hair root, the hair bulb, and the hair shaft. Keep in mind that the hair shaft is dead, and it is made up of epidermal cells. The hair papilla, if you'll notice on down toward the very bottom of that whole hair shaft, this is where we will find blood vessels in that general area, and they are there to provide nourishment for the growing hair shaft. Hair color is due to the type and how much melanin that we have. And another thing I want to point out to you is this erector pili muscle. And you've heard the expression, hair on the back of my neck stood up. I was afraid. And we do have hair that moves as such, and it's because of this erector pili muscle and its contraction from where it is attached there on the hair bulb, or the hair follicle rather, and in the rest of the dermis. All right, sebaceous glands. Sebaceous. Typically, these are absent on our soles of our feet and on the palms of our hands. These are usually associated with hair follicles. We term these Hollican glands. These secrete sebum. This is a fatty material, and it has a lot of cellular debris in it. This inside the cell, this stuff migrates or navigates. It's attracted to this fatty material, the cellular debris. Sweat glands are pseudophorous glands. These are widespread through the skin. You can see the little curlicues, and typically they'll come up very near where there is a hair shaft. These originate in the deeper part of the hypodermis, down toward the bottom, toward that adipose layer. We have eccrine glands. We have apocrine glands. These are the ones that have an odor to them. We have cereminous glands, like we would have the wax in our ears, and then we have mammary glands. How does our body regulate body temperature? Well, it is important that it happens. There can be slight shifts in temperature, and it can disturb or disrupt some of our metabolic reactions. Metabolism, some of all chemical reactions within an organism. The skin plays a key role here in the homeostatic mechanism that will regulate body temperature. As I mentioned a while ago, homeostasis is achieved via our skin because of the evaporation, quite often, and even shaking when we're cold helps to warm our skin deep in our bodies. So homeostasis, maintenance of a stable internal environment. We can't forget these basic definitions that you've all heard many times. Heat is a product of cellular metabolism. Oh, metabolism, the sum of all chemical reactions within an organism, but this is talking about cellular metabolism. So it's the sum of the metabolic processes within that cell. The most active body cells are the heat producers, and they include skeletal muscle. Oh, let's see, muscle. That is an organ. An organ is a group of specialized tissues. A tissue is a group of specialized cells. Oh, these are skeletal cells, skeletal muscle, skeletal tissue. Oh, it's an organ, yes. So what we're dealing with here is skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and cells of certain glands that we're talking about here in the liver. The most active body cells are the heat producers and include these three things. All right. The primary means of heat loss is radiation. We also have conduction, convection, and evaporation, and I've mentioned evaporation a few moments ago. All right, this is a real good illustration. You should follow the arrows. You can start wherever you would like, but be sure that you come back to that point upon making the full cycle. I encourage you to look at these, each one of the little pink pull-outs, the little squares. Look at those, see what it says, be sure to read your text, and you'll get a better explanation of that. All right, hypo and hyperthermia. These are problems that develop during temperature regulation. Hyper, above, hypo, below. So hyperthermia is abnormally high body temperature, and hypo body temperature is like what we'd have if we were out without much of a jacket on today. Abnormally low body temperature. 98.6 Fahrenheit for humans. Inflammation. I think that our bodies tend to heal themselves quite often by taking care of themselves and doing what we have evolved to do. Inflammation is one of these responses that our bodies have, and its response here would be like to injury or even to stress. Inflammation. What is inflammation? It's a heating up of these cells. Blood vessels in these affected tissues will dilate, they'll get larger, become more permeable as they get larger because the cells have been stretched. Therefore something is able to go across that phospholipid bilayer surface, and it also allows fluids to leak into surrounding damaged tissues, thus warming things up. Inflamed skin, it's talking about here, will be reddened, it'll be swollen, it's warm. Most of the times we'll find this as being painful. All right, let's talk about cuts. A shallow cut, just slightly through the epidermis. These type of injuries will typically create mitotic action so that it'll be healed over a little quicker. Just a scratch, a slight cut. This is nothing really to worry about, and these tend to heal very rapidly. A deeper cut, however, results in blood vessels that will be damaged, breaking. Sometimes it'll form a clot or a scab in an area. So tissue fluid and blood there form what we term as a scab. Growth factors, again here, is going to stimulate new tissue formation. Take that back a little bit farther. Mitotic action is going to be cellular in nature. Keep in mind, what is a tissue? A group of specialized cells. So these growth factors, such as mitosis, is going to allow new cells to be formed. Phagocytic cells. These are going to do what they're supposed to do. They're going to remove the dead cells and the debris that may be surrounding these. And this last bullet here on cuts, slide 25, is a good one. Excess collagenous fibers may form a scar. And yes, that's what a scar is. You don't see any blood in it. You see it as either lightened or sometimes slightly on the pinkish side for a while. Then it becomes a little lighter, a little straighter definition that something has happened on our epidermis. You can see the formation of scar tissue here from the onset in A and B there, the filling in of blood, the forming of a scab. You have scar tissue being formed down there, highly mitotic again. You can take it a little deeper and see that there's fibroblast starting to form there. And then the scab will disappear and it will leave scar tissue. Burns, we have first, second, and third degree burns. It has to do with the depth of the burn that will determine how we would classify it. Third degree burns can be treated via an autograft, a homograph, or some skin substitutes. Homograph would come from your skin, autograph would come from another type, and then you would have some skin substitutes that may come into play. Typically, our bodies take care of itself. This is a rule of nines. Typically, you won't be using this unless you're in an emergency situation. I want you to notice that this is for adults, and everything that you would have here will add up to 9%. The anterior portion of your head and neck will be half of that. The posterior portion will be half of 9 again. So you have 4.5 on the front, 4.5 on the back. That makes up 9% for the adult head and neck area. Your anterior trunk is going to form 18%. Your posterior portion of your trunk is going to be another 18%. So you have 2 9s and 2 9s. Look at your arms, anterior upper, posterior upper. So add it all up, and same way with your legs. Your groin area is about 1%. You add all of this up and you're going to come up with 100% or thereabouts. So in determining the percent of burn, that would be perhaps your job if you were working very closely with a physician in a burn unit or in an emergency room. All right, lifespan changes. Last slide, 30. We see this. Many of you will be working with aged people. The skin becomes scaly. It is less oily. Age spots will appear. You see that their epidermis becomes thin. The dermis aspect of the skin it becomes reduced. There is a loss of fat. These things the skin becoming dry, the epidermis being reduced, the wrinkling, all of this produces wrinkling and sagging. Our sebaceous glands, as I said a while ago, will produce less oil. Melanin production slows. Older people tend to burn a little easier. Our hair thins. The number of hair follicles that we have in our skin will decrease. One reason that many of these things happen is because of poor circulation. That's the reason that physical activity is important in our lives. We need to keep our heart rate up. We need to circulate the blood to and from these areas in our body. Our heart has to be healthy enough to pump it there. We have to be active enough from a skeletal muscle perspective that we can contract these skeletal muscles, assist our circulatory system in returning the blood venously. Our nail growth is impaired. Sensory receptors decline. Body temperature is unable to be controlled. Typically, as aged people, we get colder easier, and there is a diminished ability to activate vitamin D. I think I've covered all of this chapter, and I'm going to pick up on chapter 7 briefly here, and we will start again.